So we've come to the end of a very interesting day. I think this has been one of the most information-packed events that I've personally been to for a very long time. Thanks for bearing with us till the evening. And we've been listening to a lot of speeches today. Now it's time to talk, right? And so let's talk AI. And for this purpose, we have a great panel here. Some really I would say the league of extraordinary gentlemen, the right people to talk about AI, talk about project controls. And so we have Alan Mosca, the CTO and co-founder of nPlan. Well, he has spoken today. You will probably know him. Hello. In fact, if you use AI and risk management together, I think he's one of the few people that come to mind.
Thank you.
We have Jareth here. Jareth is the chair of AACE UK, but he's also the owner of Kaleido. And Jareth is also a practitioner. He's implementing AI agents in the field, so he'll tell us a little bit about that. And we have Marco Frisenda, who is a true veteran of in project planning and controls. Has worked on many capital projects worldwide. So he knows a lot of stories, bad stories, good stories, funny stories, right? And so Marco is the head of planning, project planning for Ferrovial construction, and he's also involved in the famous high-speed 2 project. Infamous, famous, depends who you ask. And then we have, of course, Joao Diaz, the very reason why we are all here today, the director of Region 9, AACE Region 9, also a big project planning and controls veteran himself. He's been on the field. And there's me, a humble servant today. I also have had some stars in the field. I'm also a project planning controls professional today, working for Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. And in the past, I've been, like we say, in the dark side, working for oil and gas, and on the bright side, for the last 8 to 9 years, working for the renewables. So we have quite an agenda today. We'll talk about AI, project controls, and decision making. And so we'll go through a storyline, and we'll go through 3 chapters. The first chapter will be where we are today. And then we'll talk about why AI, what's the purpose, what's the benefit, right? Actually, Alan has touched a little bit on that, but we'll talk more. And then finally, we'll talk about the future, right? So actually, this meme here, Alan already flashed it in his deck.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I had the plans for it too. The reason I'm showing this to you is because when it comes to construction, when it comes to like capital projects, it's a very Excel-dominated industry, right? Sometimes we're struggling to achieve 2015 level automation on projects. So there might be maybe a notion, maybe a feeling that AI is not taking over, it's too far away. We're still Excel, this is not happening, right? So let's talk about this. Where are we today in reality? How close AI has become and how much traction it has actually gained in the field. So, Al, you got the mic?
Yeah. I'm going to say it depends, and it depends on where you look. So, the UK, Europe and UK in particular, and a little bit Australia, seem to be, I don't know, about 5, 6, some cases 10 years ahead of a lot of other countries, and I'm including the US in the ones that are further behind. And forget AI adoption. I think AI adoption is a symptom of, I guess, development of project controls as a discipline and the quality of how it's done, even like starts with the scheduling. To the point that, like, actually, like, even the difference in the type of conversations, like, I would not go to, and I spoke at AACE Houston a couple of years ago, but I would not go to AACE Houston and deliver the talk that I gave to me.
Is that because they want quite get it, or they're not ready for it?
It feels like it's 5 years ago.
Okay.
Right? And so I think that depends, right? I think in the UK and in Europe and in Australia, there is adoption, there is will to adopt, there is appetite, and a lot of us in the regions, know how we want to do it. Whereas a lot of times when I say this from the point of view of selling nPlan as well, we show up somewhere in the US in project controls and we're dropping completely in concepts.
Okay. Jareth, what do you think?
I think, Alan, I assume you're talking mainly about machine learning as opposed to generative AI, or was it general? So I think you might be working in the terms of reference down for AI.
Yeah,
So,
as big analyst.
yeah.
Even adoption ChatGPT.
So I think in project controls in general, machine learning might be a very hard concept to even describe to people and its usefulness. However, things like linear regression techniques that have been used for years, it's nothing new, right? So why have we not been doing this over all these decades that companies in the US have been using machine learning, particularly in defense and nuclear and so on? It's only until now we're able to produce models at the speed of light, basically using generative AI. I think adoption for AI and project controls is usually down to the individual and their willingness to innovate and get their own license subscription, their own accounts, and start applying generative AI in their workplace. I think there's still a big gap where companies and project organizations need to get company-wide accounts and offer that training so people know how to use GPTs in general and how to apply it in their workplace. But then there's also this issue around practice. Where's practice going to pick up with AI whilst everything is changing and there's lots of new ways of doing things. I'm trying to keep at the cusp of exponential technology development, and at the moment it's relentless. There is an exponential curve that we're going through at the moment, and I believe as a society we're going through some sort of revolution. But in project controls, it might seem like a bit of an evolution because of the exponential gap for practice to catch up. And so what do we do about closing that gap? And I think at the moment where we are, we're still, as Alan was describing in his presentation earlier, we're waiting for, don't bother creating agents, right? Because one day it's going to be made available to us. So that's what I say on that. And your open statement as well around we've not adopted 2015 automation. That's because a lot of project controllers will need to upskill and learn how to do data engineering and so on. So a lot of organizations has developed another function, business analysts goes out to use Power BI or Power Apps to automate or visualize data in a different way. So there's been a bit of a height curve, I would say, since 2015. Like Stephen Lemonal was saying this morning, around the hype cycle we're in now. It was kind of in one 10 years ago in 2015, all these visualization tools and the rush to get to visualizations. A lot of organizations would have gone through that curve of, oh, we need this dashboard, and get the dashboard, you've got pie charts. So I can't really make a decision on that because the data could be so complex. So yes, we have business analysts do visualizations and things, but now with AI, particularly developing the models, we will need data scientists, so where they get them done? We don't have them yet.
Marco, you're the man from the field, so just tell us.
So I think I agree on the fact that UK, Europe, the willingness of adopting AI is really high, but there is a real issue, which is basically we have not yet caught up with the fact of what actually AI can do, and because companies are still run by, allow me 1 second to say, some dinosaurs, even the adoption, it's true, even the adoption of AI, or the push to adopt AI is really hindered by the fact that there are people which don't really know that it's actually a complete different ballgame. So you end up in trying to implement this, like the generative AI, ChatGPT, kind of thing where you ask the question and then it becomes like the same presentation style or title that you were doing 20 years ago. The other problem that we have, and you see every time in everywhere, is also the data. We have a lot of data, but the data are not ready to be used or indexed correctly, to make the connections so that through AI can actually happen. And you can say, oh, we have a lot of data. Yeah, we have tons of data. But the problem is that in any company, the bottom line is what matters. And what becomes really difficult is then being able, again, for the same reason I said before, to actually pitch and say, we need to invest, some time to get the data ready, a proper data strategy, which no company has at the no company, probably few company in the construction industry has, which then will bring you eventually to be able to, to bridge the gap. So to me, every time is coming, the speed is really fast and new things coming out. The problem is then being able also to verbalize to the leadership of the companies how actually this is going to benefit them. And this is the tricky part, because we don't know what is coming next, because it's so fast. It's also very difficult to be able to give an ROI to them by saying, look, invest 6 months, do the data correctly, it's going to cost you X amount of money, but you're going to get this and this and this benefit that if you calculate, that's what you're going to get. And I think that's a little bit what is slowing down the whole, it's a dualism between lack of resources, because the people which really know AI, especially in project control, you need to upskill a lot of them. So I think he said it, you have people which, for their own, start to learn and, they want to innovate, but it's kind of in pockets. You have the problem of the leadership, which is still in a very old-fashioned way of thinking, of mindset. And then the third part is also, I haven't not yet seen a real way to actually being able to pitch, an investment at the global, I'm talking about now company level, to enable to get it faster, get the business analysts, get the right people, upskill them, do the proper work that you have to do to clean the data so that you can, not clean, but, to link data, clean the data so that you can arrive there.
Yeah. So Joao, how far do you think it is?
Well, let's put it in this way. I think, the willingness for adoption is there, but then we have all the other forces showing us that we are still behind, especially in Europe, right? Research papers. We are probably in the bottom of the league comparing with the US and China. In that perspective, right?
If you consider the whole of AI,
Yes.
AI was
Yes, but there is very little either way, right? I think you have been a good example of interacting with academic or with the academy and pushing for that through KTPs, I believe. But there are very little companies doing that and pushing that way. I think the research is definitely what can take us to the next level, including research, obviously more focus on project controls. And then on the other hand is, again, it's really hard to pitch for construction businesses, which obviously the profit margins are so low. Why should I now spend money on a work stream that maybe in 1 year, 2 years will change, right? But what I can see based on my experience, I think is easy to justify to deploy on a single project rather than trying to adopt it as a core of the business. And then the third part is the security, right? When you talk about or with IT department of different organizations, you will straight away get a block, right? Where is the data going to? And then you end up everyone using ChatGPT on their own personal account, right? Yes, which makes it much worse. I've done that experience of walking in the corridor and looking into everyone's screens, and you can see, instead of Google, now you see ChatGPT open, right? But I think we are not, and we have the example of we both work on the same organization in the past, where we have financials integrated with schedules and vice versa, right? P6 integrated with SAP. How many construction companies do have that? Yeah, pretty much zero, right? So we are not even doing the basics right. I think we will have definitely a path.
I'd actually give you data. Someone with 50,000 channels, less than one.
Out of 750,000 schedules, less than 1% are cost-loaded. So, in fact, a lot less than 1%. I think it's like 0.1%.
What's it? But it even like the government sometimes does it.
Because sometimes you don't cost load directly the schedule and you link it to a tool. So obviously it's just get the schedule.
Even those references still exist.
Well, that's the cleanup of the data I was talking about. Absolutely.
I personally remember, like, I think it was 2020, in the midst of pandemic. Back then, no one was calling it AI. I think back then it was known as, or at least one of them, like RPA, robotic process automation. And we're trying to kind of implement it for repetitive schedule generation. Because we had like schedules and projects which were quite repetitive, but scalable in nature. So it was basically a monkey job for a scheduler to create those bidding schedules. Right? And we tried to implement RPA. And I remember myself how many obstacles I faced within the organization, despite having the will, despite even, we even calculated how much time and when subsequently cost we could save on. But like IT was one of them actually. So we hit that wall. One was like, we couldn't bring in another contractor to do this, and then we had to go in-house, and then they didn't have time. We had to raise a ticket, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a known story, all right? So
two things. One, it sounds like I need to sell you Schedule Studio, but just like in projects, it sounds like politics is the problem.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, isn't it always most of the time? So now that we've spoken about it, and I think you started kind of tapping into that a little bit. So that's about benefit, right? What's the benefit of AI? We said that it's sometimes it's a difficult sell, especially to those dinosaurs with those long trousers, right? And but let's forget about those dinosaurs. Let's talk between us, right? What we actually think AI can do today, at least like, let's talk about some low-hanging fruits. I mean, yeah, you have the Schedule Studio. We talked about like maybe generating schedules from a text. Each one of you, give us like one thing to think that it's a low-hanging fruit, and AI with the existing models, with the existing technology that we have today, can solve this for a bunch of professionals, for a bunch of projects, like tomorrow. Got the microphone.
Yeah, it's good. I think even with the dinosaurs, I think you could sell AI those low-hanging fruits and make them look good, particularly if they're in a management position. So I think that's driving a lot of the so-called low-hanging fruit and value from AI. Since slip my mind, sorry.
Well, again, I think we have to be very precise on what we mean with AI, because obviously,
at what point, what do you understand?
Because, for example, we have, as an example, in the HS2 project, we have actually implemented an AI agent, which is more used, if you ask me at the moment, as basically helps you go faster in, for example, researching information on, the contract, or researching information on quantities. If implemented now correctly, which means what I always call it as cleaning the data, or actually what we now started to call it the golden thread, which is actually quite the correct term, because you can connect at least a data point, forget about all of them, but at least one, you could potentially start to, to get also more clever answer rather than just where can I find the clause in the contract. So if then you talk about real AI, that what I mean with real AI is actually an agent or something which can actually give you a proper answer on a question like how have been the quantities affected, or what is actually the shortest route between two sites based on the limitation that you have on the transport or regulation. We could potentially do it. I think the technology is there. I think as I said, the real issue is having people which either invest their own time, because that's what it is at the moment, or you do an investment and you say, okay, let's really clean the data, take a month or two, do it properly. And I think the technology is there. I mean, you see it everywhere. The real obstacle is always the same. Unless you can go to the people and say, oh, look, it gives you that answer. And then they will say, oh, brilliant, fantastic, let's adopt it. Yeah, but before that, there were some people on their own time which worked 25 hours, just to show you a demo. And sometimes it's just a demo, just as a sales pitch. So it takes another 1 month in order to get something. Good. So, yeah.
I think that's, so I remember what I was going to say. I'll do go and some more actually. I think what your example you're given is mainly quantitative, I believe.
At the moment,
yeah. Yes. I think the low-hanging fruit really, because Gen AI is going to be text-to-text, speech-to-text in some cases. It will help out a lot with the Delphi method type assessment, if you're, whether it's minute captured or a risk assessment, for example, if you're scoring risks and doing multi-calls or multiple effects assessments, you could get a much more powerful summaries from that rather than an individual in a workshop entering data into a full piece of software. Which also leads me to my point over project controls, as we know, has a lot of deep domain expertise, are separate and quite siloed in a lot of cases, and they use their own databases. So when we're using Gen AI, like going into ChatGPT, you won't have that connection. So there's a case of this transposing of information out of, say, a risk register software or articles have been downloading and uploading it, whether it's drag and drop or copy and paste and tables or whatever.
So Joao, we talked a lot about, between us two, right? We talked a lot about site progress, site journals. Yes, in a potential area.
No, I think obviously AI world is quite large, right? I think if we streamline it into the LLMs, GPT models and so on, obviously to ingest, digest information might be a case study to deploy in certain cases, right? One thing that I have noticed throughout my recent dissertation work is that without SME, you cannot just assume that you will get the right answer, right? I think you need as well some hands around you to support the results and to verify the results. I have tested different models from OpenAI to Claude to Gemini recently, and at a certain moment, once you start to increase the data that you are analyzing, the results qualitatively go down. So you really need that sort of rules behind your model or hand in hand in order to get the results. That's why also, as you mentioned about the agents, people building agents. I mean, for me, that is also a waste of time at the moment.
Okay.
It's either you know what you are doing, you know exactly what to search for and how to program that and how to create the rules, or otherwise you might be entering a Pandora box and the results will reflect the reality, especially on predictive, obviously, analysis. Yeah.
Okay. Talking of verifying data, Alan, I mean, you obviously sitting on quite a ton of data, right? So how do you tackle the problem? How do you verify the data that is sitting in those 750,000 schedules?
I mean, it's a very hard job, right? I think if someone asks me what is nPlan's moat, it is actually not the data set and it's not the models. It's the ability to understand what's in a schedule. So and what I mean by that is there's so many different ways that you can build a schedule. There's so many different ways that the schedule can be bad. And there's so many different types of bad content that could go in it. Point in case, at some point in one of the data sets, we found Tom's holiday. So, we took 5 of the last 7 years were basically 90% focused on cleaning and interpretation of that data, and then correlating it with other pieces of data that we get. And that's an important variable here. Building out those systems to understand, clean, correlate, and then make the data usable, as actually Marco was saying. So, but one of the things that I did want to say, right, is, I said it before, one of the things that is most exciting to me about AI adoption right now is scaling things up, right? And it's like, you have like the low hanging fruit, which is acceleration of something you already do, right? So like, and this is where you used to think RPA, and now you basically use ChatGPT operator. But then you have the next step from that, which is, if I can do it fast, it means I can do it hundreds of different flavors, right? And one of the things that actually excites me a lot about this is generative design. So architecture is going to change so much in the next 3 to 5 years, because you no longer have an architect making one design or like a couple of options that you get to choose from. You can actually have 500 different options for your building that you get to pick from. And then you're going to have like choice, too much choice leads to indecision, etc. But that to me is exciting.
So we talked about like what can be done today, the low-hanging fruits. But if we forget all the limitations, let's imagine, right? Let's have a dream. So maybe not a dream, maybe it's actually a nightmare. I don't know, depends. So in the future, how do you imagine like project planning and controlling in the sense like today, right? So how do you imagine it in the future? How is it going to be from A to B? Jareth, you got
That's a very good question.
Do you have an answer?
Just
imagine, don't have to think.
I think Alan's right. The exponentiality of this is absolutely incredible. And not only is architecture going to change a lot in the short space of time from now, it just changed tremendously the last 6 months. I think there is value in building agentic models from scratch. We spent the best of our time last year. It's incredibly difficult. But about the grounding and getting the understanding of that information does require investment into new ways of harnessing data into new databases, and the treatment of those taxonomies as well.
Yes,
But I think that the future from a people perspective, I'm going to answer that because I don't really know around process and technology. I welcome my colleagues, but for people, I think that there's got to be a massive shake-up, and there's going to be a lot of roles, and particularly the types of work that they're doing is going to start off, obviously, the mundane, more automation. But we're, like I said at the beginning, we're going through a societal revolution right now, and that closure of that exponential adapt in project controls is looming.
Marco? So, well, for sure, the job of project control and planning has already kind of changed, but will be, in my opinion, pretty different. We will remind you how the figures has changed today. Well, it has already kind of changed because I'm going to use a very proper term now, but the classical P6 jockey, the one which was really good at P6, the tool, let's be honest, now nobody really looks for this kind of people. So now you have already, somebody which is literate with the data, not yet, on the AI space, but at least literate with the data. But whereas before, to be fair, you were having a P6 schedule, you were having these people great at using P6, but that was about it. So it has already changed, but in my opinion, it will change even more, because you can see that the donkey work that everybody does in planning and project control, which is sucking you up at the time, 80% of the time, actually, as Alan said, there are certain things that you don't really need to to spend time on doing, because it can be done faster and probably even better now with the tools that there are. But I see, for example, there is a software which enables you from a 2D design to actually build, schedules. There is tools. There is nPlan, for example, for the risk. I mean, there are quite a number of tools now that, for me, is kind of an orchestra. So you start to have the different instrument, and in the future, if we have then the director of the orchestra, which is able then to put all them together, you will arrive to the point where the planner or project control, to be fair, will not even have a problem looking at, have I put the correct code? Have I done that? This is all done automatically by the tools. You can see, I mean, you share on LinkedIn, I think, at a certain point that you can get a schedule, that you can start with without having to go by scratch.
That was Schedule Studio, wasn't it? Yeah.
So that's the game changer, because you remove everything which is literally, let me use a waste of time, because this can be done automatically. And now you start to put in, I have all the information coming in, everything, which is just donkey work is gone. Now you put your brain in and you start really to focus on what actually is important rather than waste time in this kind of things. That's, I think, that the near future is quite near to that.
Yeah, Joao, you remember the exercise we carried on about what different project planning and controls of roles and levels and what kind of requirements there are and how do you find a profile, right? So hearing what you've heard and thinking whatever you're thinking about right now, how would you imagine that in the future? Let's say if a project needs a planning and controls professional, first of all, is it the same person in the future, in that future? And if yes, what are the traits? It's not D6 anymore, that's for sure.
Let me ask ChatGPT. The reality is, it was a proper exercise, but I don't have the answer, right? I agree pretty much with everything that's been said, but I don't know. What I do believe is it won't change on the next decade that much. I think you still have some path to go through. But what I sense is tools like nPlan that don't really disrupt the day-to-day activities. Those are the tools that will succeed. Because in the industry, you can see a lot sales-aggressive people reaching your door and trying to sell scheduling optimization that actually 90% of the work is your manual input rather than actually then the model doing the job for you. Then that won't work, right? I think tools that actually fit in within your workflows, complement your workflows, that those are the tools that will be here. Whether or not the function will change, I think as Marco mentioned, it changed already, right? You need a much more capable planning person rather than the P6 jockey. We can feel that, we can sense that. But yeah, in terms of, I don't see the things changing too much in the next decade, to be honest. Especially with all these changes on a weekly basis. DeepSeek comes in and everyone starts to shake and what will happen next, right? But yeah, in terms of, just to add on and just came to my mind, obviously the data quality, I think that will be, in my view, also a big transformation. I believe no matter what is the data that you will have, I think the models will be capable to digest it, treat it on their own, and use what is relevant.
Are we seeing signs of that today? Are we seeing that the models, the agents, are capable of sorting bad data for us?
Yes.
Elaborate.
Kind of answer. I'll elaborate a little bit. I think I'm trying to advocate, and this is where I get a lot of rocks thrown at me, that actually this notion of you need to clean the data is outdated. Okay. And the reason for that is principally because of LLMs, and especially LLMs like Gemini, where you can throw 2 million tokens of context into one single prompt. That means that you can throw all the documentation that you have, including the schedule, into a prompt, and then ask whatever you want, right? And you don't need structure for that. Plus, semantic search, retrieval, augmented generation, all these things are basically destroying the nice choice of ringtone. Destroy this notion of like we have to structure the data. I think what you still need to do, the data needs to exist, and you need to find a way of putting it in, but you don't need to work so much on the structure of the data anymore.
That's an interesting perspective. Marco, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's kind of true, but at the same time, at the moment, I don't think we are there yet, because all the data that we have, I don't want to say are bad, but are kind of flagged them as the...
Up to it.
Well, yes. What I mean is for different reasons, but it's, yes, you can, put it in a prompt without anything. But my personal opinion is you still need, and it has nothing, not really to do with the structure, but actually while you do the exercise, why I call it cleaning data, while you do the exercise, you're also trying to filter the data. I make a very practical example, because the planners are always under pressure when it comes, to the moment of doing the update. And generally speaking, they really have like 2 days to update, 5,000 activities. The update which comes out as actuals, I would not trust the actuals that you have in any schedules, to be completely honest. Because what matters is more the forecast, that your critical path is correct, that, it actually shows you the picture. What I'm getting at is, if I now take the schedule, I put everything in, in a prompt, and yes, it does the analysis, while it will be very skewed what you get out. So to me, the cleaning of the data hierarchy is more also getting in order your house, which means you take the data, and by doing the exercise of, structuring them, even if it's not necessary, you also try to, to make sense of what you have, what is good, what is bad, what you can completely ignore, because it was just a complete nonsense.
So my challenge to that is, yes, but actually what you can do now is you take the schedule with the updates that you may or may not believe, throw in all the emails from the last month, a number of pictures, maybe a point cloud, and then say which of these actuals look wrong. And you don't need to have structured data to do that, you just chuck it in. And I think that's the reality that is pretty much there now, apart from perhaps the point cloud, because
That's a lot of faith we're putting in mail communication, I think. A lot of faith in email communication. That's my personal opinion. So,
or WhatsApp history or whatever it is, right? You'll have someone screaming about something having gone wrong that hasn't been reported in an actual, right? Or there'll be something about, wait, actually our concrete delivery didn't show up. And then you're like, oh, wait, hang on. That has been actualized wrong.
Well, what about the bias in projects? That won't be in that context, and those documents that you're feeding into AI as well. You're not cleaning the data. It might actually be a conversation not on alien data, but having better data quality, which is something different, whether we hold decision makers to accounts. They're making decisions, but sometimes decisions are made that affects the data in certain ways, such as reducing, manipulating costs or manipulating schedules, for example. That context won't exist.
Well, we maybe I shouldn't say this. This is being recorded.
it is being recorded, yes.
We have actually spotted a contractor padding activity durations without float by 20% on everything, just by using nPlan on the schedule, and it was literally something that came out without asking it. Okay? So these things actually do emerge just by throwing unstructured data in. And it's interesting how the world is changing in that way. And it's changing faster than we can keep up with it. Okay? So like now, you can upload a video to Gemini and say, hey, write me a LinkedIn post about this video. And how's it doing that, right? Like it's actually taking, in some sense, the bytes from the video, creating some text, and then creating the post without actually having any structured data in it. And so like, you can do that for all sorts of content, as well as then, because the LLMs have internal world models, pointing out which bits don't look credible. So you can actually use the models for the filtering, which is a super interesting part for me now. So you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I think my statement was precisely about using the models to filter data. I think that will be the next thing. Obviously, we don't need someone to go there and then start deleting the data, removing the outliers. That will be automated. And I think that will be the moment where obviously big data will come in, and the adoption as well will obviously benefit from that. So the non-structured and clean data won't be relevant anymore. That's my view. I've tested it briefly during the dissertation project, and it does work. Yeah.
And that was like a distinction with like the year programs. 6 months.
Jareth, just a quick one, leading up to it.
Yes, one final point. This way that in contrast to Joao's point of view, that AI is going to take a long time to be adopted and change things. I again echo the revolution, and that there's going to be a lot of change, I think, in the near term. And it's going to pull the rug from under a lot of people's feet, where I think models that we've known in like pre-industrial age or industrial age are going to be transformed, such as the governance and accountability, the top decision making. I think the level of abstraction when you're talking about data at the project level up to the decision making, say the Capital Office in the UK, for example, and the government measure project portfolio, then there's going to be AI at that level where the transparency is going to change. We don't know what that looks like yet. But people won't be able to make the decision like they've done. But we're talking about manipulations or strategic misrepresentation or whatever you want to talk, whatever you want to call it. I'm hoping that the future view is that we're going to take it.
So in that change, let's say, how could professionals in the field today and wannabe professionals stay relevant? I'm still being, like, people reach out, right? They ask about, I want to be a scheduler, I want to change my career, or it's someone young out of university or college, they want to become, a project planner or a controller. And they're asking me about P6 trainings or certifications, etc. To be honest with you, I can't wholeheartedly recommend anything because I don't think it's the edge, right? So considering these changes, how can we all stay relevant in the next 3 to 5 years? And what could the young blood do to be worthy of the future in the profession?
So I'm a cost estimator. There's not many of those about anymore.
That's
A
true.
lot of projects are schedule driven. And I think that as a youngster that got into estimator in my teenage years, working in offices with a lot of grey hairs, just like the picture that you had earlier to me, quite literally. I've been the innovative one that is able to handle data and turn heads around. It just couldn't be done. It's simply pen and paper, So I've had my foot in the door of the past to all these changes up to now. So I would suggest that we look at this innovation that's happening in the project space that is closing this exponential gap I was talking about. We're in that awareness curve. Or you take the garden hype cycle, for example, right, the hype curve. I'd rather see it as the awareness curve. Make sure that you're aware of everything that's happening today. Contrary to what I was saying at the beginning about how relentless the pace of changes, I'll still keep finger on the pulse. Young people would naturally adopt to these changes based on the data suffering, the technology. This is, as I said before, a social revolution.
Marco?
So I think that the answer is a little bit different between cost, project controller, or planner, because at the moment, if somebody wants to change, like you're young, you want to change and you want to become a planner, you don't probably need a certification. But for the next at least 2-3 years, I can't really see deviating from Primavera, Microsoft project, but let's stay on Primavera, which means you still need to use it. Now, don't get me wrong, Primavera is like exec, so you can learn it quite faster. So at the end of the day, yes, learn how to use Primavera as you would learn to use any other tool. But at the same time, be very aware of what you can actually do now with the tools that are at your disposal. It's because we are in a hybrid moment, if you ask me. So, the industry hasn't changed yet so much that you can say, forget about Primavera because, everything is going to be done by AI. So you will still need to kind of use it, at least I think for the next 3-4 years, you still use it. But at the same time, you need to be absolute, as you were saying, very keen in what is actually coming in, the innovation which is coming, be data literate, which is really important. It's not, everybody uses Excel, but from a data perspective. So to me, I would suggest, yes, learn it as a tool. So no certification, as 10 years ago with the certification, it would have been helpful. But at the same time, definitely be on the forefront of everything which is happening, so that when the shift comes, it will come probably even faster, then you are ready for the shift. That's my view.
Yeah, I think Marco probably touched all the points. 2 years ago, I decided to enter a master's in data science, precisely trying to see, okay, what is this new world of AI, of data science as such. Yeah, and I think definitely being aware of what's going on, it's relevant. But being aware of, obviously, all the streams that you have in AI, machine learning and so on, it's also relevant, right? You need to choose your path. You need to choose where to invest time, because it's multiple streams, right? You cannot really, I believe, digest.
So what would you recommend, for example, for a self-development perspective? What to spend time on?
Yeah, I think, learning around the LLMs, it's definitely critical at the moment.
Generally, or in a applied sense?
In applied sense, but also data mining. I think it's interesting and it's relevant from the point of view to judge, obviously, to judge the results of the tools. And I do, from all the modules that I did have, I think data mining was one of the most open eyes subject, super interesting, especially for planning, outliers and so on, all those contexts. And then, obviously, I think LLM is something that you need to be aware, not just to accept everything.
Alan, a spin-off question to you from the same one, right? So you're a bit different. You're coming from a technology side of it, right? So who do you think your best allies are in the field?
That's a very good question.
On the project.
So the allies for AI adoption, which are also going to be implicitly nPlan allies, are actually those who are secretly using ChatGPT despite their IT department telling them that they can't on their personal account. And I think this is how a lot of the change is going to happen. Okay? There'll be call it a point of inflection in every organization where someone's going to go actually, where everybody's uploading everything to ChatGPT, we need to actually reverse our strategy of saying you may not use AI on anything because everything we do is so secret and so special, and actually have things with agreements on how the data's used and actually regain control, right? And I think those are the people who will be the project controllers of the future, where the way I think about it is can I go on a tangent a little bit about my secret dream of how projects are going to run is I think things like the schedule and the report will probably for the better part disappear, and you'll be in this situation where you'll have, I'm going to call it like just-in-time construction. And like, now we're looking at the far future, right? But like where somewhere an agent has built 1 million versions of the schedule, and those 1 million versions start converging as you go along the project, and like orders get issued right, left, and center based on which person you're switching to. And there's like a very cool discipline called decision making under deep uncertainty, which basically explains how this works. And I love the MDU, but I have a whole 3-hour rant about how much I love the MDU, and I'm not gonna bore you with that. But it's gonna look a lot more like a manager of a decision making under deep uncertainty system. And actually, you're going back to the meaning of the word control, right? Which is to exert action on the project. Because otherwise, like, if you think about how project controls happens today, like, that's why I asked that pointed question. Like, a lot of it ends up being reporting or hypotheses that then don't end up going anywhere, or a risk analysis that gets ignored, or in the best case or in the worst case manipulated. And like, these are things that, if you think about even how AACE started in the beginning, that wasn't the purpose of project controls, right? And it got somehow deviated into a lot of these, I'm going to call them like red herrings in a sense, which are necessary for the rest of the project management. But maybe we can like simplify that away and go back to actually controlling the project. Interesting.
So you have one quick one, then we'll need to.
So, don't ever forget also that we have also site people which are working on the schedules.
Very good points.
No, what I mean is, I like the idea of having, 100,000 scenarios which then converge. But let's also remember that on site, to organize a listing of a decker, it's not something that I organize in one day. It takes me 2 weeks to make sure that I have everything there. If I change the schedule drastically, because it's actually a good thing for the future, well, it might not be possible because I have everything in place to actually do it in that way. So I think there has to be a correlation between having the 1 million scenario, but then there has to be some continuity on that, because as I say, site teams, which are actually the ones which are making the job, you can't make them change every day, based on new information which are coming in. Yes, you kind of are able to change a couple of things, but generally speaking, it comes at a cost. This is what I'm saying.
There's a lot of human factor too when it comes to site, right? Thanks for joining us today. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.